This is an official warning to the rest of the MLS. Marcel Hartel might be coming to a stadium near you, and his favorite thing to do in this whole wide world is create goals for others and himself. Whether it is from the spot, or maintaining possession in the field, or creating chances for his teammates like you see in these examples, or simply just having a flair for the amazing as he enjoys a nice bicycle ride now and then. And while you may not know Marcel Hartel now, fans of St. Pauli in Germany certainly do, along with those that follow the second Bundesliga. And I brought one of those folks into this episode, Matthew of the second Bundesliga Podcast, who has a thing or two to say about how good Hartel is and what he could offer to St. Louis.
Well, someone with versatility, creativity, and now shown to be a serious attacking threat with the goal scoring that he provided this season. So in terms of like a system, they played a 3-4-3 at St. Pauli, which allows versatility. You know, this season he played more often as a number 8 alongside Jackson Irvine. However, there were times where, especially in the second half of the season, he played as an attacking winger on the left-hand side, or even as a false 9. He can play in so many different systems and formations and positions. He's typically, I would say, best as in either an 8 or a 10.
So he certainly appears to fit the mold of a player that Lutz Pfannenstiel and the scouting department at St. Louis City would target, but he also fits as a dynamic attacking threat that this club is sorely lacking right now. After a fairy tale inaugural season in 2023, St. Louis City SC has fallen on hard times. The club crashed and burned out of the MLS playoffs and suffered the indignity of losing to their hated rivals that play in Kansas. Sorry, Sporting KC fans, it's just a fact. Your stadium is in Kansas. And this season, St. Louis City has unfortunately not made it epic on the pitch. The club is having a hard time putting the ball in the back of the net, ranking toward the bottom of the MLS in the first half of the season in goals scored, failing to even make the scoring sheet 5 times through mid-June. St. Louis's designated player and striker Joao Klaus has just 5 goals this season as he struggled with confidence, but also feeling like he has to do extra work as a facilitator on offense and not just a pure goal scorer like he was at times last year. Edouard Leuven, Rasmus Alm, Tomas Ostrak, and Celio Pompeu have fallen to injury this year, though Leuven has recovered. Knut Thorsen hasn't taken the next step yet. Aziel Jackson didn't either, and now he's leaving. We'll have more on that later. And Sam Adeniran found himself in Bradley Cardinale's doghouse earlier this season. And all of this has left St. Louis soccer fans restless and hoping for answers to the questionable attack. Some regression to the attack was expected this season, especially after Nico Gioacchini was sold to Como, but most fans and even some experts probably didn't expect times to be this rough. But help is on the way already on the attacking front. Cedric Teuchert, I'm not going to pronounce that last one. I'm just going to say Teuchert is coming over from Hannover 96 this summer, and like Hartel, he's also a German that is a proven goal scorer at the second Bundesliga level. If you want to know more about Teuchert and what he can offer to St. Louis, you can check out my video on him on this channel. Just click the button in the top right corner. But now on to Hartel himself and how he could buck the trend of MLS signing just older players near retirement or players that may have something to prove. Hartel has nothing to prove. He is a proven offensive threat, and he's also in the prime of his career. Hartel is 28 years old and he hails from Cologne, Germany. At the tender age of 6, he joined FC Koln's youth system. And yes, it is pronounced FC Koln. I learned that from my recent video on FC Heidenheim's meteoric rise from the 5th tier of Germany to the Europa Conference League this coming season. You probably don't even know where Heidenheim is or what a Heidenheim even was before you heard me just speak the name just now. So if you want to know more, get educated right up here. Back to Hartel. 14 years after joining FC Koln, he made his Bundesliga debut as a 20-year-old, but only made a handful of appearances on the main roster while mostly playing in the reserves. Hartel would break through the following season, but not for FC Koln. Instead, he was sold to Union Berlin for 250,000 euros, and it was here in Berlin where he scored that fabulous bicycle kick you saw earlier. That happened in 2019 on the way to helping Union Berlin getting promoted to the Bundesliga Bundesliga. However, he played a part-time role only in Berlin, averaging about 60 minutes a match and tallying 4 goals and 7 assists. But just like he's doing in 2024, he's not joining his club in the German top division. Instead, Hartel was sold to Arminia Bielefeld for 250,000 euros in 2019. And in another trend that's starting to become noticeable, he helped Bielefeld get promoted to the Bundesliga in 2020, playing 33 matches and dishing out 13 assists in a regular starting role. But he would struggle in the next season in the Bundesliga.
He's a classic Bundesliga 1.5 player. Now, allow me to explain. He's always been a very solid Bundesliga 2 player. I mean, the season with Arminia Bielefeld, I think it's a bit underrated. You know, sure, he only scored 1 goal, but he had 13 assists, and he was one of the league leaders in that category the season that Bielefeld gained promotion. And as fantastic as he was in that moment, in that season, the following campaign, it didn't really pan out. I think he played 22 games and failed to score. Or even had an assist in that time. And the following season, it became clear that whether it was Frank Kramer or Uwe Neuhaus, there wasn't really a place for Hartel in the Bundesliga aspects of Arminia Bielefeld.
With no goals or assists by the end of January and with a coaching change, Hartel fell out of favor in Bielefeld, playing just 84 minutes in the last 4 months of the season and even being unselected for a match against Freiburg. But it was in Bielefeld where Hartel would play with a familiar face to St. Louis soccer fans.
You know, he played with Joachim Nielsen at Arminia Bielefeld. Perhaps that's a factor as well, you know, the familiarity with him, and perhaps he sold him on the experience of playing for St. Louis.
In the meantime, it was time for some new horizons for Hartel, going back to the familiarity of the second Bundesliga and signing with FC Pauli in 2021. Transfermarkt reports the fee was about 350,000 euros. And St. Pauli turned out to be exactly what he needed to break out.
I would say system had a big part. You know, we saw the turnaround statistically with his play moving more as a number 8 in the Hertzler system. That certainly worked. It worked to his strengths. It allowed him to be a bit more free-flowing, a bit more creative, an exceptional player, and you put him with the right personnel and you allow him to sort of play his role of football, you'll find that he's gonna fit quite well.
He notched 2 goals and added 8 assists in 34 games in the second Bundesliga and Pokal in 2021 and 22, and then followed that up with 5 goals and 8 assists in 34 more games in 2022 and 23, this time playing even more minutes than before and cementing himself as a key piece in St. Pauli's reckoning. And then came this past season.
He was extremely instrumental in their promotion, led the team in goals and assists with 17 goals and 12 assists, so that 29 scoring involvements, which was one of the best in the league. He got the rewards for his work rate and being in the right positions and being able to create so much. I mean, you know, to put in perspective, the 17 goals this season, that was 4th best in the division. It was the best amongst midfielders by quite a significant number. But, you know, he's only 5 goals behind the top scorers in the league.
An absolutely seismic season for Hartel, who had finally found the consistent playing time and system that he needed to succeed in. And St. Pauli rode Hartel's offensive excellence back into the Bundesliga for the first time in 13 years. And it'd be the 3rd time Hartel's club would be promoted to the Bundesliga in his career. But just like in Berlin, Hartel isn't sticking around this time for the Bundesliga. He's out of contract, and there have been reports of interest from other clubs around Europe, from Germany to Turkey to even France. So why go to St. Louis?
That's a really interesting question, because obviously MLS continues to grow. There's more expansion coming, and you know, looking at the numbers this season, attendance-wise, clearly that there's a strong fan base within St. Louis for football, and not knowing the ins and outs of the deal, I would think financial would have to come into play, and you know, to pull someone at that age with coming off one of their best seasons career-wise, I would think there would be some sort of financial pull.
So we know about Hartel's history, and we know about St. Louis's need for an attacking talisman, but we still may not have seen too much of him on the field, so we need a comparable player in mind to compare him to, someone that we probably know already. And online, since the news broke that he could be signing in St. Louis, I have found two very interesting comparisons to the type of player that Hartel could be for St. Louis. A German fan on Reddit compared him to Nashville FC's Hani Mukhtar, who blossomed in the MLS as a devastating do-everything attacker after never seeming to break through in previous stops around Europe. How about even a grander comparison? A St. Pauli fan on Reddit compared Hartel to a prime Christian Eriksen, a tremendous and tireless finisher and orchestrator in his own right, who might even be worthy of his own statue outside of White Hart Lane in Tottenham.
I would say it's kind of a shame that he is departing, but just because you would love to have seen him at St. Pauli in the Bundesliga. But I suppose, like many things, these, sometimes relationships don't last, and ultimately he probably felt he wanted a new challenge, and I guess Major League Soccer was the challenge he was looking for.
Thank you once again to Matthew, the Second Bundesliga Podcast, for the insight into Marcel Hartel. You can follow Matthew on Twitter, and you can also find the Second Bundesliga Podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. In a couple days, I'll post my full conversation with Matthew, where he provides much more context into Hartel's career, his playing style, and perhaps why he's choosing the MLS over Europe. But in order for St. Louis to add Hartel, they have to subtract from their current roster. And to subtract in this sport, you have to find a willing dance partner. And that's where the Columbus Crew not only step onto the dance floor, but it turns out they were at this Hartel party already. 22-year-old midfielder Aiden Morris is leaving Columbus to join Middlesbrough in England's Sky Bet Championship. The fee is $4 million with a sell-on fee. Now, at one point, Hartel might have been a replacement for Morris in Columbus, but Transfer Market's Manuel Veth reports talks between Hartel and the Crew fell through, and that's when St. Louis and Lutz Pfannenstiel stepped in. But St. Louis needed to acquire Hartel's discovery rights from Columbus and will reportedly pay $350,000 to do so. And somewhere along the way in these talks between St. Louis and Columbus, the name Aziel Jackson came up. Jackson's progress had stalled in St. Louis after getting a U.S. men's national team call-up earlier this year, and presumably with Hartel coming in to play his position, that left Jackson in a tight spot. Meanwhile, Columbus needed to fill a spot Morris left behind, so AZ is off to the Crew for a reported $650,000 in GAM, plus add-ons and a sell-on clause. He's already in Columbus as we speak. The deal is done. An international roster spot, meanwhile, for Hartel was also created later in the same day, when the Nicholas Dewar experiment at left back came to an unceremonious end just 6 months after it started, as he went back to Denmark, this time going to Randers FC, who will be playing against the club he just left, FC Midtjylland, in the Danish Superliga. Oh, and Dewar will also play against another promising Danish youngster that also didn't work out in St. Louis, Isak Jensen. Jensen flourished after being loaned to Viborg, and the Danish club triggered a purchase option in his contract. He too will be playing in the Superliga. Now, I'm no expert on scouting, but maybe St. Louis should avoid Danish youngsters for a little bit. The first 2 tries didn't work out. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please do what the screen is telling you to do right now. Hit that like button, go ahead and subscribe, and leave a comment below on how you think Hartel will do in St. Louis. Oh, and while you're here, consider becoming a member of the Soccer Zombie supporter section. It's less than $1 a month, and you'll join other cool people like David Cotton, Tom Willenbring, Doris Hearn, Angus McHorter, Kane Viktorovich, and Steve Feltner. This is your Soccer Zombie, Tom Franklin, and speaking of those cool people, those same people joined me for a recent live stream that I did as St. Louis took on Inter Miami and Lionel Messi. Now, you don't have 2.5 hours to watch the full live stream, so I made a nice, convenient 9-minute version for you to enjoy. Hopefully.